Craig
You said just present.
Yeah.
You're funny.
Present to us.
Morning, everybody. How are y'all doing?
Morning.
Thanks for letting me come and share some information with you this morning. Some of you know me because of the ACTV digital signage program that we have here for ACA. I'm going to introduce what I do kind of overall this morning. This is more of I'll call it a company overview, and I would just encourage you to kind of plug in where you think it makes sense for you. So I actually am the CEO and founder of a company called Aphthonia. It's a holdings, real estate, and investment company. And that company owns and holds shares in my other two companies, which I'll share with you here in a couple of minutes. But this morning I wanted to address this topic of how to escape chaos. So I'd ask you, how many of you guys feel like your business owns you? Raise your hand. Yeah. And if we're honest, that's not really why you started your business, I hope, right? You don't want to feel stressed out. You don't want to be thinking about where's the next client coming from. Oh, I have to follow up with that person. You know, all the things that come along with the business operation side of things. We started our business because, if we're honest, I hope, you fell in love with the idea of the thing that it is that you do. Whether it's finances or healing, health and wellness, or you're in real estate or whatever the industry is that you're doing, it's because you wanted to help people in that space, because you loved doing that, because you were gifted with the ability to do that. So this is my family. This picture, both pictures are actually probably about a year old because it's super hard with 5 kids to get them all in the room together and get a picture all at once. If you guys have children, you know what I'm talking about. So this is about a year ago. I believe this was at I think we were doing gingerbread houses or something for Christmas that year, so 2024. And then my wife on the left there, or your right, she doesn't like to have her picture taken very much. So I don't even know how old this picture is, probably 2 or 3 years old, because she's just like, I put the camera up and she's like, does this. So, but these guys are the reason that I do what I do. They're my inspiration, probably like a lot of you, right? The reason we start businesses is because we have people in our lives that depend on us. We're passionate about what we do. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't get up and do anything every day if it wasn't for these guys. I just wouldn't, because it'd be so much easier just to sit in bed and go, I don't care. But when you have other people that depend on you and support you, that's what matters. So a quick story about how I became an entrepreneur, because I think it's relative. Those of us that are entrepreneurs, you have this thing in your DNA that's kind of strange, really. Right? Like, who really wants to be an entrepreneur, right? When you grew up, when you were a little kid, most kids are like, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, whatever it was. You never really sat around and went, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to wake up stressed out in the morning. I want to figure out how to solve problems for other people. I want to get paid very little. I want to be, right? So I think there's a moment in time, though, that it happens to all of us, right? You kind of get bit. Like, I'm also a musician, and there was a time I remember very specifically when I heard someone playing the drums, and I became instantly attracted to that and became a drummer. And I've been a drummer since I was 12 years old. Well, right after that, when I was 13, I went to my mother one afternoon, and I said, hey, Mom, I need $20. I want to go to the movies with my friends. And she was a single mom, and we were pretty poor growing up. And she said, Craig, we don't have extra money like that. And so I was pretty upset. I walked away. I'm like, I'm not going to have $20 to go to, I can't go to the movies. But as I was leaving the room, she said to me something that's really stuck with me. She said, Craig, there's always a way. There's never an excuse. That was it. I'm emotional because she's been gone for 10 years. And I carry her with me every day as an entrepreneur. I walked out of that room with those words ringing in my ears, and I said, I can't be mad because she's right. And I walked out, and you can see that red house in the picture. That's where we lived. And this is in Massachusetts in, however old, when I was 13, whatever year that was, so long ago, 40 years ago. And I walked out of the house, and I sat on the front steps, and I was mad, but I was trying to figure out what she meant and how I could actually come up with $20. And I looked to my right, and they had just built this automatic touch-free car wash. It was one of the first ones in the country at the time. Now they're all over the place, right? Loaf and Jug, and they still suck. They don't dry your car off, right? But I walked next door to that car wash, and the guy who was like the operator, I figured he was the owner or the manager. I asked him for a job. I said, is there something I can do? Can I sweep? Can I dump the trash? Can I do something? And he said, no, get away, go away. And so I walked away even more angry. And as I walked past the end of the building, the cars were coming out still wet. And it occurred to me, well, these dryers don't even do a good job drying the cars. If I ran home and got some t-shirts and a couple of buckets, I could wipe the cars down and I could ask, do it for tips. So I went back and asked the guy, I said, hey, do you mind if I stand on the other side of your car wash and, finish the job, wipe the cars down for tips? He's like, yeah, whatever. So I ran back to my house and I got some t-shirts and some old shorts and I threw them into a 5-gallon bucket and I ran next door and I wiped cars down for like 4 hours. I made $80 that day in tips. So I tell people, I had my first business at 13 years old and I never even named it. I went back to that car wash every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, for 4 years. I was making somewhere close to $1,000 a month at that, doing that business. So I share that with you because I'm an entrepreneur. I've always been an entrepreneur. Now, I've always had jobs too. I've always worked in corporate America because that was the thing you were taught to do, right? Get a job, go to school, get a job, retire. And I did that, but there was always this thing ringing in my ear about what my mother said. Don't like your job? There's never an excuse. There's always a way. Don't like how much money you make? There's never an excuse. There's always a way. Every time I met adversity in my life, I heard those words, and it drove me back to entrepreneurialism. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew it from 13. So I've had probably 14 different businesses since I've lived in Colorado since '98. And I've had some success and I've had some failures. But what I've gotten out of all of them is I've learned, right? As entrepreneurs, we're always hungry for information. We want to learn how to do it. We want to learn how to do it better. We don't want to make the same mistakes twice if we can help it. We want to make more money. We want to help more people. And so fast forward through a bunch of those journeys, those successes and those failures, I arrived at the point of the pandemic. Now, you may or may not have met some people like this, but those that have started businesses during the pandemic are some of the scrappiest entrepreneurs I've ever seen. Those of you that have maintained your business through the pandemic, you are some of the scrappiest people I have ever met. Because here's the thing, the whole world was telling us, stay indoors. Don't go out. Don't be part of the world. Don't be in relationship with each other. Don't do something productive. Just stay home. Play it safe. And I couldn't do that. I've always been the kind of person, if you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to go find a way to do it anyways just to spite you. And not so surprisingly, my 4 daughters are exactly the same way. And I love them. I can't even fault them for it. So in 2019, I had a friend who approached me. I was working from home, and he said, hey, I've got a business, and I need some help with social media. I heard you used to own a social media company. Can you help me? I said, sure. We got together for a couple hours. I helped him figure out his problem, and he wrote me a check for $500. I didn't ask for it. He just wrote me the check. And I said, that's not necessary. And he's like, no. He's like, your time is worth something. Whew, that hit. Because I had come out of 30 years in IT, only to be told that your job is to sit at that desk for 8 hours a day and justify your existence and do some tasks while you're there. And when someone tells you that you're worth something and they back it up financially, it changes you. I thumbtacked that check to the wall above my desk. I told him, I said, I'm never going to cash it. And I really didn't plan on cashing it. About 3 weeks later, I get a phone call from this guy, Roger, and he says, hey, Chuck told me that you helped him with his social media. I have a business, and I'm trying to get some help with my CRM. It was one of these things that had just kind of come out, and nobody really knew how to use it. And I said, well, I can take a look at it. I've got a software background, so I can probably help, fumble through it with you. So I helped him. He wrote me a check for $750. So now I've got 2 checks pinned to the wall above my desk, and I started thinking, what is this all about? What am I supposed to do here? Am I supposed to leave my job and just jump both feet in to something new that I don't even know what it is yet? I stayed at my job for about 2 years, but in the same time that I was doing that, I had another friend of mine in the community here say, I think you'd be a great consultant, a great coach, a strategist, a technology advisor, and there were all these different titles that kind of came out of it. And so I spent some time thinking about it, and I decided to actually form my company as an official entity with the state of Colorado. Had no idea what I was doing. just all this experience from all these other companies that I had run before. And so I put together a roadmap and a methodology for me to use and started to execute on it. So Aphthonia really was if you guys are all Star Wars fans, and what I call the first 3 Star Wars, if you're old, you know what I'm talking about. They're actually the second set of 3, right? The original trilogy. That's kind of like what Aphthonia is for me. It's the 3rd company that I created in the set of my trilogy companies that I currently own, because I needed a place to have as kind of a container, a holder, right? I wanted to have a structure that made sense, that had some, tax benefits. It had some deferment capabilities. It had some removal of liability, all the things that we care about as business owners. But I had started my company, Ask Craig T, because I wrote a book and everybody started asking me questions, like Roger and Chuck, about how to do things. And so I developed this brand that ultimately became this company. And I'm glossing over a lot of the details because I don't have a lot of time, but suffice to say that I really became focused on one mission, and it's to educate, equip, and empower business owners to learn, big emphasis on the learn, how to use technology in order to scale their business. I took 30 years of experience as a process improvement engineer and a software developer and tester and put it into a methodology that I have used in my own business to scale my business to now we'll do over $500,000 this year in revenue after just 4 years and some change being in business, which I think is pretty incredible for a guy who didn't want to start a business. Oh, by the way, I unpinned those 2 checks. That's how that was my startup money for the business. So I did cash them. Chuck called me and said, I knew you would. So, and then my 3rd company, like I mentioned at the top, is ACTV Digital. I acquired that business, which was really another component of Aphthonia, was to acquire other businesses as investments in my portfolio. I acquired that business at the end of 2024, and I'm now in the process of scaling that company. We've gone from just over 35 TVs to now 54 as of yesterday in our network, and we have 27 paid advertisers and 54 hosts that are hosting those locations. So that network is starting to grow really fast, and I have huge plans for that, but we'll move on from here. An ancillary part of my technology business is the technology bus. If you were here a few weeks ago, a month ago, I had a class. So I use this bus to do pop-up classes that are free for business owners. So if you want to follow this, you can go to my website. It's askcraigt.com. I can give you the information after. But those classes are totally free for you to come to. We have 58 different topics we cover. I tell people it's everything from AI to zip files. Anything you want to know in technology that you can use in your business, 90-minute blocks of instruction that you can take and apply right away. And then, of course, I talked about ACTV enough. If you have questions about that, you can actually see Kerry or Chewy or Emily. I saw Emily. They can get you started, or Scott. We've got a sweet deal for you guys here in ACA. I don't know why it's not advancing. Here we go. So this is what I help people do. So really big focus on these 4 areas. I uncover inefficiencies. A lot of times when I meet with clients for the first time, the first couple of meetings are around processes. How are you doing what you do? Is what you're doing effective? Is it efficient? Are you wasting time? Are you not getting the result that you're looking for? Because if we don't refine the process first, if we don't fix what's broken manually, all the technology and automation in the world is not going to matter. I tell people, music analogy, if you have a really bad band and a really loud PA system, what you get is a really loud, bad band. And the same thing is true with your business. If you have a crappy process in your business and you amplify it with technology, all you have is a really bad amplified process. We look at the systems. I ask people all the time, what's the definition of a system? I think we did this the other day when we sat down too. Systems to me are just a grouping of smaller microprocesses. All the little things that you do and how you do them, put them together, that's a system. Still very manual. And then integrating technology. Look at the places in your processes, in your business operationally, that you're repetitive, that you're doing the same thing over and over again. Email is a good place for this. Calendaring is a good place for this. The text messages that you're sending out, if you're sending it out more than one time, the exact same verbiage, then that's a place where you can automate something. And it doesn't seem like a big impact, but when you take away a 5-minute task 10 times in the day, over 4 weeks in a month, over the year, you're now saving a ridiculous amount of time that you could be focused on doing other things like being the CEO of your company. And there is a difference, by the way, of being a CEO and being a solopreneur. A solopreneur is someone who works in their business and not on their business. A CEO will step back and spend intentional time to look at the vision about how you're going to scale your company, and then put those strategies in place and start to execute. And then transform your operations, creating a business that runs without your daily interaction. By show of hands, how many of you could walk away from your business right now for, let's just say a week, and everything would run without your involvement? You wouldn't have to respond to an email. You wouldn't have to follow up. You wouldn't have to take a phone call. You wouldn't have to process a payment. How many people? That's kind of what I expected. I was going to say a month, but that's almost impossible. But a week, I mean, think about that. You can't even walk away for a week to take a vacation. Carrie and I were just talking about this morning. So engulfed in your business that you can't take a break. That's a definite scream for what I do with my clients, showing them how. Now, the funny thing is, I do that so often with my clients, I kind of don't have time to take a vacation. But that's okay, because I love you guys. So this is the pain that most owners feel, though. See if any of these resonate with you. I'm always putting out fires. No one can do it the way that I do. This was a big one for me when I first started. I know that tech could help, but I don't know where to start. I've plateaued and I'm stuck. Any of those hit with you guys? What else? What else do you guys feel or think about? What kind of pains do you guys think about? Just kind of blurt them out in your business. Nobody? You're all good? Come on now. What do you think about? What keeps you awake at night?
Clients not calling me back.
Yeah. And so what has to happen if they don't call you?
I have to call them.
Yeah. It's perfect. What else?
Being responsive, more responsive than what one or two people can do when you've got other meetings or you're tied up in meetings.
Yeah.
As an example.
Yeah, I mean, and I hear a couple things there, right? It's the, I got to do it because no one else will do it the way I want. It's also a little bit of lack of the ability to delegate, right? Because you don't trust people. But there's also this idea of, as CEOs, one of the hardest things to do as a solopreneur and flip the switch to being a CEO is the recognition that you need to hire someone to help you. You need help. You can't do it all. And then, of course, you have to have the conversation of, are my systems and my operations, my processes trainable? Right? Can I teach Marsh how to do this thing that I need him to do? Because if I'm going to hire him and pay him, I want, a productivity result-based relationship there. Have I given him the tools and the necessary resources to be successful so that I don't have to then go follow up, right? What else? One more.
How to filter your focus. It's so many different things coming at your attention.
So like prioritization and like what's the most important thing?
Yeah, signal versus noise.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah, noise. I call it distraction, but noise is actually pretty accurate, right? Like in the course of a day, my phone will go off. If I'm on my computer, I have notifications popping up, right? Some of them are your spouse. Some of them are clients. Some of them are maybe vendor relationships that you have, right? Partnerships that you're exploring. Which one do you answer? Which one do you respond to first, right? Having a process to be able to discern that is really key. That's a good one. I like that.
The right answer to that is why.
Right? No, not always. But the counterbalance to that is date night. So make sure that you go on date night. Which I haven't done in 2 weeks. So I'm in trouble. But this is the real reason you're stuck. You're working in your business, not on it. Like I said, you've built a job. How many people feel like they built a job and not a company? Be honest. I know sometimes I feel like that. And I've got about 80% of my business automated. I still sometimes wake up and go, right? And there's a lot in that sigh. I don't want to get up. I don't want to go to this client call. I don't want to talk to that person. I don't want to pay those bills. I don't want to. If you find yourself saying something like that in your business, you've created yourself a job. And it's the worst thing because you can't fire yourself. I mean, you can, but then you got to go back to a job. And I don't even want to talk about that. So this is my 3-part strategy. It's real straightforward. Systems, and I'm going to say it backwards. Systems, technology, and process, just because I like the visual representation of the STP logo, the oil logo. I can't use it because I'll get sued, but that's kind of how I think of it. But like I said, it's the idea and understanding of what your systems are, right? So those micro processes all grouped together. Understanding what those processes are too. If you have a broken process in your business, it's real easy to find. It's the place you're probably spending the most time, the most money, and experiencing the most frustration. It's really obvious. So if you think about your business along those lines from a process standpoint, you'll identify the areas that you need to work on. And then, and only then, once you have those processes figured out, this is where I start to suggest injecting technology, right? Because like I said, if you put the technology in too soon, you're just going to amplify the problem. You want to fix the processes first and then move forward and inject technology so you can get that automation, that repeatability, that consistency. So these are actually some results from my business in the last quarter. So this is real. Putting more focus into my CRM with automation, eliminating manual follow-ups and data entry. I took typing in school and I didn't like it. And then when it became computers, I'm not a great keyboard. I mean, I can hold my own ASDF, JKL semicolon, like I can do it. But if I can push a button and have it all happen magically, I'm all about that. So I've actually spent the last quarter automating a bunch of my intake processes, surveys and assessments to intake my clients, ways to vet them out based on the way that they respond to those surveys, to then put them into a workflow that's automated that will then communicate with them with some preformed messages and things like that. And so I've got, 20 hours a week. That's huge. That's huge. 80 hours a month back in my pocket. I mean, so now I'm only working, 60 hours a week. So faster onboarding. Like I mentioned, the onboarding piece, having standard operating procedures is huge. Marsh and I actually met earlier this week and we talked about this as well. But I've seen a 50% faster onboarding. And in my business, what that means is my client intake process. So I can take clients in 50% faster. Well, not only is it just faster, but that means what? If I take 50% faster clients, when I take a client on board, what does that mean? When you take a client on board to your company, what does that mean? Money. Yeah, who said money? Yeah, money. You said revenue? Yeah. Revenue is the nice way to say it, cash. So 2 times the traffic. So I have ACTV up here as an example because I'm advertising on it too. ACTV digital and trackable QR codes. You guys ever heard of trackable QR codes? So a lot of people use QR codes and scan them. And what's the problem with scanning a QR code, assuming that they work?
You don't know where they go.
Yeah, well, you don't know where they go. Yeah, you don't know if someone actually scanned it or not. So we encourage people with ACTV, if you put up a video ad on our network, to make sure you have a trackable QR code, something you can go and look at the analytics that's specific to that advertising medium so that you can see, oh, I put an ad up on ACTV and 150 people scanned it today, right? Hopefully, right? And so you get 150 tracks and you can see that marketing, that platform is effective for you. This is key in your marketing strategy with everything you're doing, print media, digital advertising, whether it's TV, billboards, things like that, have the ability. So I have increased my traffic ×2 with this part of my methodology and my marketing strategy. This is a huge one. How many people have ever had meetings scheduled and then people don't show up? Everybody should probably raise their hand because you don't have 100% show up rate. But when you have a process, if anybody's ever booked a meeting with me, raise your hand in the room.
Wait.
A couple, 3. What happens when you book a meeting with me?
You get harassed.
Yeah, you get
reminded.
Yeah, the minute you book the appointment, you get a confirmation. Huge. Most people don't send out confirmations. Now, I know Google does it, and you can set it up to send out the messages if you remember to set it up. Then you get a message 24 hours before the meeting. You get a message an hour before the meeting. You'll get a text message 5 minutes before the meeting, because I'm assuming you're in your car, logic-based automation, right? And then you're gonna get one that says, your meeting is now. And if you're not sitting in front of me when that message comes in, you're late. And in my world, if you're late, you got 10 minutes and I'm out. I'm gone. It's the old college professor rule. But I have a less than 1% no-show rate. And I will tell you, to quantify that, I have about 160, 170 meetings per month on the average. So having a less than 1% show-up rate is huge. And it saves time. So what the right tech stack will do, you know what I mean when I say tech stack, by the way? Your technology stack, it's the technology that you have in your business. What it can do is, so I talked about CRMs a little bit, but you can automate that communication piece with your customers or your prospects, right? You have emails, your CRM may interact with them, having forms and workflows. How many people have a form on their website of some sort that's like a contact us form or, get more information? Yeah. How do they work?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. And that's an honest answer. And that's what I typically get. And the reason that you don't know is because your forms aren't tied into something that provides you with data analytics, right? So if I were to sit down with you, and I'm assuming you have a similar experience. Do you get any people off your forms?
Yeah.
Okay.
Email auto generated.
Okay, perfect. So when we sit down, we would talk about those things and say, okay, well, how can we track those results? How can we better look at, I actually have a class coming up on the bus on July 14th. You guys should all come. If you don't have a Google Analytics account, or you do and you don't know how to use it, you should come to this class, because I'm going to teach you the basics about how to use your Google Analytics directly tied to your website. Who's clicking on what buttons on your web pages? Where are they bouncing to? A bounce is when someone comes to your website and they go to another page and they leave because maybe they didn't like the content, or they didn't find value there, or there was no call to action, right? We look at all those things, and analytics, your Google Analytics account can track all of those things. You can give it tasks that you can actually teach Google Analytics to do. And as it does it, it tracks metrics against those things. So how many people clicked on the submit button on your form? You can see those results in your Google Analytics. So you should come to that class if you're not doing those things. But forms and workflows are huge. I mentioned a couple of examples of workflows already. When I get a new contact, right? So if we tap this bracelet today, this is my Popple, this is my digital business card. If we tap this, you automatically go into my CRM. That's a workflow integration. And immediately you're going to get put into a drip campaign where I'm just going to kind of get to know you, harass you, right? And send you some things over time. You know, you might get a white paper, a PDF that adds value. I know Marsh hands out a lot of those things too. I don't care to print them out and hand them out. I want them to go out electronically. So those will come, and you'll get some different things from me over time. And then there'll be some opportunities embedded in there for us to do business, right? To convert. Maybe it's scheduling a business assessment. Maybe it is going to a particular landing page or website where I want you to consume some information specific to what I might be promoting, right? So some indirect passive marketing strategies. So those workflows are huge. From there, scheduling, we talked about scheduling. I went through the Calendly, saga when it first came out, and I was instantly unattracted because at the time they only gave you 2 calendars that you could use. I think they're up to 6 now. They're kind of catching on that people need more than 2. And then I also didn't like some of the integration that they had, but then I got introduced to the platform that I use now, and so I found a lot more flexibility. But calendaring, I actually have 16 different calendars that I deploy. They're all for different reasons. But I love having the ability just to send a link to somebody. And you guys have seen this, where you get a link and you can schedule. But I love it from my perspective because I'm able to say, okay, Carrie and I are going to meet about this thing, and I can send that calendar. And every calendar has a different set of availability attached to it. And what that does very indirectly is back to the slide about saving time, right? That's where I can actually optimize where I'm going to be on a particular day and how long I'm going to spend there. I'm only going to do 4 meetings of this type on this day on my bus. I'm only going to meet with coffee appointments at this location. I'm only going to do 6 of those a day because they're this amount of time long. Those all go back to those process things that we're talking about, understanding how you work. So it's all kind of in my head, but I have the tools in the system to back up the process and the methodology that I use every day. So people will often say to me, you have so much stuff going on. How do you keep it all straight? How do you have time to go to the pool? I see you posting pictures of you at the pool with your kids. I'm like, well, because that day I blocked out that time so that I could go to the pool with my kids. And I didn't just go into the calendar. All of my calendars have restricted time blocks. So I don't work on Sundays. That's the Lord's Day, right? So there's nothing going on Sundays. Saturdays, they're generally off limits. I manually process on those days. If something comes up like an event, I'll put something on the calendar, but I don't have that availability visible for all of you to try to make me work 6 days a week. Dashboards. So back to analytics. I always tell people data never lies, but people do. So if you want to get an honest assessment of where you're at in your business, you need to gather data. You need to be looking at those trends in your business. How many customers do you have? What products and services are they consuming? How often are they consuming those products and services? What methods are they consuming those products and services through, right? Your marketing channels. You have to have some way to look at all of those things at kind of an at-a-glance standpoint. So a dashboard is kind of a general term, but if you have the right system, you're able to go in and look, and you can see things like your analytics for your website. You can see metrics for whether or not your Facebook or your Google ads are effectively working, right? You can see those numbers. You can see your sales data, right? How many transactions have you performed? What have you sold? Who have you sold it to, right? Getting that buying behavior, that persona of who you sell to consistently. Maybe there's another market slice that you want to break into, and having that data can actually paint a picture of how you're going to get into that market segment that you're not in already. Am I losing you guys? I know it's super exciting stuff. So I try to make tech more exciting. So this is how I work with people. I do a business assessment first. I develop a custom roadmap for you, so you walk away from that initial assessment with a roadmap. So whether we work together or not in the future, you'll have that roadmap that you can take and execute on. And then I also do one-on-one coaching sessions along with some group coaching. And I've got some other products that we can talk about in terms of tech support and things like that. And then really big focus on the implementation support side. And when I say implementation, I am not going to go over to Mark, and Mark knows because he's a client. I'm not going to go over and I'm not going to do it for you. I'm going to teach you how to do it. I want you to walk away from that session because it might be the last time we ever sit together for whatever reason. I want you to be able to do the thing that you're having me do with you. Again, it goes back to the whole teach a man to fish, right? I don't want to just give you the fish. I want you to be able to walk away from it and know that you can control your company, because that's really, at the end of the day, what our mission is all about. Almost done. So here's a couple of testimonials. Like the customer I was telling you about, we 5x'd his revenue, and it was actually less than 12 months. Reduced his work hours. You'll see a theme here, right? Reduce in time, increase in revenue. Reduction in time, increase in revenue. That's really the metric that I measure my business by. And so I say this is, I have to get a t-shirt with this, but burnout is not a badge of honor. If you're burning out in your business, if you feel like it's owning you, something's wrong. Don't walk around going, I'm busy, because everybody can be busy. Are you productive, right? Are you adding value? That's what you should be wearing as a badge of honor, not that you're burned out. So what would more time, less stress, and more profitability mean for your family and your future? Emphasis on the family part, really. What's your family life like in your business? Are you present? When you go home, pop the laptop open, the kids want your time, the spouse wants your time, and you're just like, I'm doing the thing. Are you present? Is the business consuming you? There's something wrong if that's the case. It's broken. So don't scale the chaos. This is the antithesis of everything I just talked about. This is what most business owners do after I talk with them. They go, that was really cool. Thanks for all the information. I'm just going to go right back to doing what I was doing before, which was chaos. And so you can scale chaos. It can grow. In fact, it probably grows faster than anything else in the business. So don't focus on the chaos and try to scale that. Focus on how to get rid of the chaos and scale your business. And then we can do Q&A here in a second. But if you want to scan that QR code and you haven't already had a business assessment with me, scan the QR code, it'll bring you right to my calendar. We can set that up and I'll sit down with you for an hour and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about in your business and see if we can't get you moving again in the right direction. So I'll leave that up and then I'll open it to questions, and Carrie will tell me when I have to stop. I have to stop. Okay. If you have questions, come find me after. We can talk some more.